This is BBC 5 Live. 5 Live Daily with Adrian Childs.
Just gone 7 minutes past 10. It's becoming clear that Rio Ferdinand's TV documentary about surviving the loss of his wife has already done an enormous amount to raise awareness of the plight of bereaved fathers. And it's not even been on yet. It's on tomorrow night. Rebecca Ferdinand died nearly 2 years ago at the age of 34 after a short, ferocious battle with an aggressive form of breast cancer. Rio is now single father to the couple's 3 children. This programme's on BBC One tomorrow night. It's an extraordinary bit of television. Rio talks about trying and failing, essentially, to come to terms with the calamity that's befallen his family. He meets other families coping with bereavement and looks at what help is available for parents and children going through the same thing. Do share your experiences with us. If you can, text 85058 or call 0500 909 693. You'll have heard of little bits of Rio speaking about this, about his documentary this morning. Here's the longer interview that all came from. Emma Barnett spoke to him last week.
Firstly, it was to help, for me to get a better understanding for my children and help them through this next phase of their life without a mother. And then secondly was to help other people, because I thought, looking back on what I'd been through, I found a lot of kind of holes in the journey so far in terms of help, advice, where to turn, how to go and get that advice. And I wanted to just highlight to people that there are places out there, and that there are great outreach places, that great charities that are doing great work, but us men are sometimes too macho, too egotistical to kind of think and reach out for them type of things. So it was kind of to strip myself back and just have a real good deep look and search for the help that is out there, because I was ignorant myself, and I was very much of the thinking that, listen, there's no way I'm going to go and see a shrink or somebody who's going to try and tell me how I'm meant to be dealing with this, who's not been through this situation themselves. But once getting on this journey, I kind of got a great understanding that there are some fantastic people out there that do help, and that even if you go to one meeting, that there is one little gem that you can take out of them to kind of help you along on your journey that you're going on with your children.
Your wife, Rebecca, how did you first meet?
We met through a friend, actually, in a bar. I knew one of her friends, and I said to her to go and go to the bar and write your number down. And she turned around and told me to go away. And that was the first time I met her.
Yeah, it's part of your memory collection with your children. That was one of the stories that has gone into this memory box. We'll come on to your children in a moment, and also some of those themes you talked about, men and how they talk about grief. But she was first diagnosed with breast cancer in 2013, and then it came back in 2015. It was very quick from it coming back to her passing. Did you really take in that you could lose her?
No, because the first time it happened, like the children, from their perspective, they look at cancer at that point as being like having the flu, having a cold, because it came and went. Obviously, a lot of stuff went on in between that period, but at the end it went. So life goes on for them. And when it came back, even then, it was much more aggressive. We wasn't given that, right, here's the cut-off point. It was still, if these certain drugs work, then she could be okay. So me, in my mind, I never allowed myself to go down the road of thinking, what if she passes away? Because you just sit there and hope she's going to be okay. They're going to find something, her body's going to react in the right way to something. So, and I was of the thinking that if I do start becoming negative and start thinking what ifs, that could then feed into my children, and then they become a bit anxious and they're upset, and I don't want them to be like that. So we made a decision together to try and keep it away from them and let them live as normal and structured life as possible. And then if the inevitable does happen, then we worked out at the point. So it was it was difficult, but as I said, when we went to the meeting with the other guys or other widowers.
These were the widows you meet in
So in the film I meet a group of guys who are part of a group who talk over email and stuff, and within a group online. that talk about their whole situations and their experiences, which help each other, which is great. And I went and met them, and you got one guy saying, well, I had 5 years. They said she's got a 5-year lifespan, an expectancy. So he had 5 years of building and working through how they're going to tell their children, just planning everything, which is great. He was afforded that time where there's other people like myself who were kind of, it was like, I think it was 6 weeks from going into hospital, and then Rebecca passing.
The doctor in the film actually compared it to a sort of sudden bereavement almost, in the sense of, let's say, God forbid, she'd been hit by a car or something. That's how quick it...
You can't prepare. And then so a lot of the problems I had after was like, I hadn't prepared to be in this position to how I tell my children, what do I tell them, like, what does she want me to carry on with the children, what certain little tricks and little gems that she have with the children that I maybe didn't see at bedtime or whatever, that I carry on, and when they get to certain birthdays, what would she like them to be doing, or do you know what I mean? We couldn't have them conversations because because it became so aggressive, and she wasn't able to have them conversations at a certain point.
After the news had started to sink in, and then you start making this film as well, and you're going on this journey, and as you say, you're trying to help people and learn how other men especially have coped. You say in the film, I don't think I've grieved yet. Do you feel you've grieved now?
I think the journey of making the documentary has been part of a grieving process that I hadn't started, and since making it, definitely the grieving process has come on, because at the time I was just searching for answers. A big part of it is that I don't think you can grieve as a parent until you can feel your kids starting to make strides, because I was always just consumed and worried about them.
And the lovely thing, if I may say, is in the documentary you talk about you're worried because you've got these 3 beautiful children and you don't know what's going on in their minds. You don't know how they feel. And then your mum is interviewed and she says, I look at Rio and I don't know what's going on in his mind. So you see it, each parent, each generation worry about the next.
Yeah, and it's a bad place to be when you're worried about your children's feelings and you can't press buttons and get things out of them, because they're too young, and 2, they're dealing with a situation that's unheard of almost. Well, it is unheard of in their life, really. So until I started filming and meeting these various groups, I didn't know any techniques to speak to the children. I didn't know what buttons to push, because I'd been starting conversations with them to try and get how they were feeling out, and they would just shut me down, walk away, close the conversation down completely. Whereas there was things like the memory jar that we came across. So I went to one of the counselling sessions with one of these groups with young children who were doing it, and one of the girls said that she had a memory jar and that they just wrote down memories all the time of her mum, and she wishes she had written down loads more, but even just the littlest things like what smell and stuff like that. So I then introduced that to my children, because I thought that's a good way of doing it, through drawing and writing. And then once I introduced it, it kind of just opened everything up, and it was just like it was a beautiful moment, really, that just seeing them talk happily and being joyful about their mum, rather than it had been very kind of sad and like negative moments talking about their mum. So it just switched it from dark to bright.
Staying with your children for a moment, what's been the most difficult thing about being mum as well as being dad?
I think just an appreciation for what it takes to be a mum at home. I think I never really appreciated that. Like probably most men, when I speak to them, you don't really know we don't know, because we're not there a lot of the time. We're out working, and I was fortunate enough to do the school run every day when I was there in Manchester when I played football. I thought I was doing the school run, but I was doing the easy part, taking the kids to school in the car. The preparation, which starts the night before, they're getting their school uniforms ready, making sure their bags are ready. The next morning, getting their breakfast, getting them up and getting them ready, doing their hair, creaming them and stuff.
You do look like you're quite good at plaiting now.
Yeah, well, she demands that I have to do plaits, and she's moving me on to different techniques now. But you don't appreciate that as a parent, as one of the parents who's out just working most of the time, and then coming and dipping their toes back in and just thinking that you're really doing the daddy duties when you're
and the washing
really,
machine never stopping.
Yeah, but it's just the preparation and structure that you've got to have as a mum, that mums do with their eyes closed, that we as men don't appreciate. So I've got a better appreciation for that, definitely.
So has it changed how you view and women around you.
It's just made me appreciate them probably a bit more of what they've got to do. Like, I mean, I appreciated women anyway, and I appreciated women that stayed at home and wanted to make homes, family homes. But I never really took any time to understand what goes into that.
And there's a lovely scene in the documentary where you talk to a girl who's lost her mum about how, and you speak to her dad about puberty and those next steps. Do you think in any way, are you worried about being a dad to your daughter in some ways more than without Rebecca?
Yeah, I was.
Than your sons?
Yeah, I was, but then that's the whole point in why I've done this film as well, because I got a lot of answers around stuff like that that I needed. And I could have asked my mum or anyone, but speaking to someone who's in my situation, who's had to go through that and deal with it and come out the other side is probably a lot more beneficial to me and my daughter. So that was another reason why, and it will be more beneficial to other people who watch, because they get a raw understanding of what it's like. Like, he went and just bought a whole load of the every tampon that was out there. Do you know what I mean? And then you're saying, I'll get one, right, if I buy them all. Do you know what I mean? So,
I did say this. Poor dad, he'd gone and bought every kind of sanitary towel.
Yeah, sorry, sanitary towel. But
no, you were right there as well, both.
But he's, so they would, and to us men, they seem like little things until you're thrusted into this position. Yeah. And then they become huge things, and they become things that you worry about. And that's why it was so important for me to make this documentary, I think, because it not only helps myself and my family, but I know that it will help in the long run other people.
You're listening to Rio Ferdinand talking about his documentary Being Mum and Dad, which is on BBC One tomorrow night, talking to Emma about it. If you're affected by issues in this discussion, there's a range of organisations and websites that can offer you advice and support. You can find them listed on the BBC's Action Line website at bbc.co.uk/Action Line. And I'll give you a telephone number later. And if you want to get in touch with us to talk about your experiences in the kind of thing, with the kind of thing that Rio's talking about, do get in touch. Text 85058, call 0500 909 693. Let's go back to Emma's interview with Rio.
There's two facts that stood out for me in this. Men are half as likely to seek counselling as women, and 75 men under the age of 50 are widowed every day in the UK. When you got together with those other young men who had lost their partners, their wives, and you started to talk about it, I mean, one of the guys, he's been in the unfortunate position of losing a wife and a child, but he sort of said, this is like top trumps, you know, for loss here, for sympathy. How would you describe the way men grieve now you've kind of sat with some of these guys going through?
The guys that I'm with, they're in a group, and I think, listen, they're. I looked at one of the guys, that guy you just mentioned there. He actually, I went and see him again, him and his wife, his new wife, and he just seemed like he compartmentalised it better than anyone I'd seen. It was just like, right, that's happened. Even with the ring, he said to me, all of us, there's six or seven of us, he went, who still wears a wedding ring? And I put my hand up thinking I'll be one of maybe all of us. I was the only one.
And you're still wearing it today? It's nearly 2 years on.
Yeah, and they don't wear it. And he said it was, the vows said, until death do us part. And so I'm living like that. I live by that. And it was just like, I just thought, that's so black and white. I couldn't understand it.
Do you think you'll ever take the wedding ring off?
If you ask me now, no. But things change, and I think in terms of the way you are, where you are in life, I wouldn't say never, but I don't see myself right now taking it off, no. But it's a weird situation in that if men, for instance, I'm from a background of being in a real macho changing room where egos, machoism lives, and to be the best and to stay in there and sustain that elite level of performance, that has got to be part of your identity. So then when you get into the situation I'm in, you've got to strip all that back, and you have to show emotion for the sake of your children. If you're going to cry in front of your children, I'm a dad, I cry in front of my children. My boys don't want to see their dad cry. But in this situation, to help them, they need to see if you're having an emotional moment.
So have you done that now?
Yeah, because I knew straight away that that's a part of me that they have to see for them to be able to move on.
And away from these men that you met through the film, I don't know, who's your best friend in football or from football?
Got a few good friends in football.
All right. My point is, you brought up the changing room there. I mean, how have your friends, not these guys that you met, how have they reacted, especially in the footballing world? Like you say, it's all about being the best. It's all about being macho. Have they known how to deal with you?
It's awkward because I think everyone else it's awkward for. Like, how do you talk to someone who's in my position? How do you approach them? They want to come over and say, "You're right, I mean, how you doing? I understand how you're feeling." Well, you don't. And then so a lot of men will go, "You know what? I'm probably not going to say nothing," but then I feel rude, so it's awkward. It's just an awkward situation. On the school run, it happened. The first day I went back into it with the kids, my mum came with me and the kids, and I remember a lady standing there pausing and going, and she was having a dilemma. I could see, do I go and say hello? She almost walked to come over. My mum went to her, "Listen, don't come over." But because she feels awkward, if I don't say nothing, he feels I don't care and I'm not acknowledging anything. So,
have you felt alienated though by that then with some of your friends? Or
yeah, I just understand that it's awkward. I don't judge anyone on it, but I understand that it's awkward for you as well as it is for me. Do you know what I mean?
What would you say to any guys who are listening to this who've got a friend, a male friend who's lost their wife?
Just keep it simple and just listen. If you've got anything you want to get off your chest, whether it's this or just work or anything, you know my number. Just speak to me. I won't ask you again, or I might text you in a couple of months or whatever, a couple of weeks, but you know I'm here to talk to you. That's simple as that. Because all this, I understand how you feel. It must be so there to think you don't want to hear that, because you just like, that's a line of sympathy. You know, most men don't really want sympathy. You just want to talk.
In the footballing world, you retired at a very similar time that this happened to you. Do you, if you were still playing and this had happened, do you think, and let's say you were at Manchester United, which is obviously the club that you were best associated with for the longest, do you think you could have continued? Do you think you could have got through it? Because in the documentary, what very much came across is that your work is hugely important to you at this time.
Yeah. I think all my footballing career, that any time there were moments of negativity or downtimes in my personal life, football was always that place of kind of solace where I just went and everything just kind of disappeared for that hour and a half or a couple of hours while I was in the building. I don't know if this would have been able to kind of gone in that same box, because my children needed me to be there. Do you know what I mean? When they were at school, I could have gone and done stuff, but football's not flexible like that. The hours aren't flexible when you can and can't train. So it's probably lucky that I was retired, that my hours could kind of fit around what my children were doing. And we've very much made an effort and with my management team to do that. But yeah, working was really, I needed to work, and I kind of filled my diary up with as much work as possible to kind of, so I was out and about, not sitting in my house dwelling and thinking and kind of sinking.
You're talking about work and how important it is. The government's planning an overhaul. I don't know if you're aware of this, of the benefit that widowed parents receive. At the moment, parents will receive support for their lost income up until their youngest child leaves school, but this is going to be changed to payments for 18 months after a partner has died. Does it take 18 months to move on from a bereavement? I mean, do you agree?
I think it's quite... If I'm honest, I don't understand how the government can actually say there's going to be a timescale on it, because there isn't no timescale, I think, on anything to do with bereavement. Every individual's different. One person may take 6 months, another person may take 10 years. There isn't a time where you can say, "Oh, I'm over it."
So it seems like an arbitrary number.
Yeah, exactly. I putting a number on it, I think's the wrong thing to do, if I'm honest.
Where do you think you are now, as it comes up to 2 years on that?
I think the help of the documentary is huge. I think it's enabled me to start my grieving process.
And have you gone for counselling yourself?
I've dipped my toes into it, as you see in the film, and I will go further, I'm sure. But it's, yeah, that process has definitely started, and it's triggered off a lot of positive things in me in terms of being able to deal with my children and myself going forward.
And how are your children now?
Yeah, they're good. They're good.
Yeah.
They're, listen, I mean, if you put them in a room and you didn't know what happened to them, they wouldn't stand out as kids that have been through this kind of tragic instance. So they're good. They're busy, and they've got a good structure in their life, which I think is the most important thing.
this may be a very weird way of asking this, but is there any way that you can look at what's happened here and the loss of the love of your life, your soulmate, as you've described, Rebecca, as making you a better person in any way?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's definitely made me more aware of a lot of things, from a mum's perspective.
Being mum and being dad.
Definitely in that sense. But I think in time I'll be able to answer that question a lot better. And
for you, when you kind of look to the future now, how do you see it for yourself? You're obviously very prioritising of your children and their needs. Yeah. How do you see your life in this?
My kids being number one, definitely, that in terms of going forward and making sure that they live as good and comfortable life as they can without a mum, and just being as structured as possible for them, because I think kids kind of feed off having structure. Mine do anyway. Their mum was very organised and structured with them, and I think they feed off of that. And that's one of the things I really wish to continue with their upbringing.
One of the guys that you met, the one we talked about, you went to his house in Warrington, said he works at being alive. It was a line I just remembered from him saying. I mean, do you recognise that, this sort of effort to want to live?
Yeah, because when you come into this type of situation, you understand suicide, you understand people that do that and have them thoughts.
Did they go through your mind?
Yeah, but not for me to. I just understood. I didn't think about it myself, but I understood now. I understand now how people get to that situation.
So it changed your view of
so I can't judge people like that now, whereas before I'd be sitting there, probably Rebecca, just going, that guy's so ignorant and selfish, how has he just gone and done that, left 3 beautiful kids? Now I could say, I understand how he's got to that point. I wouldn't do it, but I understand how he's there, and you do get to them levels, and so it's a work in progress. You've got to. It's like at the beginning, especially, I would sit there and think, how am I ever going to be happy? How am I can't see a point where I'm ever going to be able to smile, because I can get happy over here, but then I look at my children and that brings you right back into sadness again, because they haven't got a mum. So how can I ever be happy? Even if they're looking happy, I can't.
And you can see her in them.
Yeah, so it kind of makes you just, there's a negative vibe always around you. But then I met people like Darren Clark, who's been through the situation, and he said with such authority that you do find happiness, you will find happiness, is out there. And so again, so that starts filling you with a little bit of optimism, and you think maybe there is a chance. And then certain things start happening in your life where your children look happier, they're getting on with their life, and that instills a brightness within yourself a little bit more.
Is it going to be difficult for you to move on romantically because you're in the public eye? I say this because I've seen a newspaper report, forgive me for bringing it up, but it's on the front page of a tabloid that...
Yeah, I mean, that's disappointing, because it's obviously my protecting my children has always been my biggest thing. Yeah. They've never been in the public eye. They've never done it. We've never done anything like that.
And you don't show their faces in this film.
No. And so protecting them has always been the biggest thing for me, and that's what I'm fearful of with things being in the press. But what this journey of filming this documentary has taught me is that there isn't a right time for anything like that, for a relationship. If you're going to move on in a relationship, there isn't a right time. One person I met was days, weeks after their partner passed away, and he was very comfortable with that. He got into a relationship. Another guy was 3 months, and then now they're getting married. Someone might take 6 years. But there isn't, again, the same as like someone who had the suicide thoughts. I wouldn't sit here now and judge that person. I can't, because I'm sitting in them shoes now and thinking there is no right time. The only people that know the right time is that person in them shoes. So yeah, I mean, as I said, I've never spoke about my relationship in the past in the public eye, and I'm not going to start talking about relationships or potential relationships that people are reporting on.
How should we remember Rebecca?
As a loving wife and mother who always done more for everyone else than herself.
And if you were to say a final word to men who are listening, who are struggling with their emotions, perhaps in the same position as yourself, what would you say?
I'd say to always have hope that and understand that there is going to be happier times. always keep that person in the thoughts of you and your children, and make sure you speak to people and reach out for help. There are charities and people out there that have great techniques of helping you through this process. So please just go online and look. Child Bereavement UK is one of them. Jigsaw is another one that we spoke to, are fantastic. And I mean, there's loads. If you just search, you will find.
I presume you'd also say it's okay to cry.
Yeah, and definitely it's definitely okay to shed a tear in front of your children, with your children, because they get so much out of that.
Rio Ferdinand, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.